Welcome to the deep dive. We basically take a whole load of information reports, data, all that stuff, and boil it down to what really matters.
Yep, find those key insights.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into how India is spending its money, looking at the consumption story. Our main guide is the CMS Consumption Report for 2025.
And it's a pretty comprehensive one. It pulls data from CMS Infosystems itself, but also the NSO, the RBI, JLL, IBEF.
Nielsen, Worldline, S&P Global, the whole lot.
Right. So a solid base.
Definitely. So our mission for you, the learner, is to get a quick but, thorough grasp of the big changes, the trends in Indian spending.
We'll try and pull out some surprising bits, explain things clearly.
Without drowning you in numbers. Okay, let's get started. What's the big picture here?
Well, the headline really from the CMS report is a pretty noticeable jump in overall consumption in FY25, a big surge.
Okay, more spending generally.
But the interesting part is what people are buying. There's been a real shift. FY24 was kind of led by experiences.
Right, things like entertainment, travel maybe.
Exactly. But in FY25, the focus seems to have swung back towards, well, goods. Actual physical things.
That is a shift. Because I remember last year, FY24, the big growth areas mentioned were media and entertainment, FMCG, and consumer durables.
Yeah, and two of those are goods, obviously, FMCG and durables. They're still important this year. Very important, in fact.
But the overall tilt is back towards goods, away from that experience focus.
Precisely. It says something about current priorities, maybe confidence levels. Perhaps people are stocking up.
Could be. And this ties into the bigger story about India's economy, right? Becoming more consumption-driven.
Absolutely. That momentum is building. And, crossing that USD 2,000 per capita GDP mark, that's often a key point.
Historically significant, you mean, like in other countries?
Yeah. When the U.S. and China hit that level, it often preceded a big ramp up in consumer spending. It's like a trigger point almost.
So more disposable income, changes in jobs. It's leading people to spend more on non-essentials, discretionary stuff.
That's what the report suggests. Rising incomes, different employment patterns are feeding into more discretionary spending. And the CMS data shows growth isn't just in basics, it's across various sectors.
Okay, so people have a bit more money, and they're choosing to spend it on a wider range of things.
Exactly. But it's not happening evenly everywhere. The geographic picture is quite dynamic.
Ah, right. So spending hotspots.
Yeah, generally, states or union territories with higher GSDP, that's gross state domestic product.
The state-level GDP, basically.
Right, and higher per capita GSDP, they tend to spend more. That makes sense.
Sure. More economic activity, more spending power.
But the interesting thing the report highlights is the rotation. The top spots change.
So it's not always the same states leading the pack.
Not always. In FY24, the big spenders were New Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
But for FY25, looking at year-on-year growth, the top five were Bihar, New Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh.
Huh. So Bihar, Himachal, Chhattisgarh jumping up in terms of growth. But New Delhi and UP are still there.
New Delhi's consistency is definitely notable, shows sustained demand in the capital region.
Interesting. Okay, so let's drill down. Which specific types of shops or sectors saw the most growth in FY25?
The report looks at average cash spending per store, and the top three by that measure were consumer durables, multi-brand outlets, and FMCG.
Consumer durables, so appliances, electronics, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And the growth there was, well, pretty staggering. An average monthly spending increase of 72% in FY25.
Wow, 72%, that's huge. That's comparing annualized figures March 25 over March 24.
Yes, gives that solid year-on-year view. It's a massive increase.
What's driving that, do you think? Just pent-up demand?
It seems to be a few things coming together. The report links it partly to more people buying homes.
Oh, okay. Buy a house, need a fridge, a washing machine.
Precisely. Residential sales were up 11% in the top cities in 2024. So new households needing durable goods.
Makes sense.
Plus, India is just becoming a much bigger market globally for these goods, expected to be the fourth largest by FY27.
So it's new homes, but also maybe upgrading existing stuff. Aspiration.
I think that's definitely part of it. Maybe some delayed purchases from the pandemic years, now focused on tangible, quality-of-life goods.
Oh, okay. Now, multi-brand outlets. That's like department stores or large format stores selling various brands.
Yeah, think of those bigger retail stores. They had a strong recovery, too, up 12% in average monthly spending in FY25.
Which is quite a turnaround because they were down what, nearly 30% the year before?
Exactly. Down 29% in FY24, though they did grow 14% back in FY23. So it's been a bit volatile, but FY25 shows a solid rebound.
What brought them back? People going back to physical stores.
That's a big part of it, according to the report. There's this trend of premiumization, people wanting higher quality stuff.
And they want to see and touch expensive things before buying.
Seems so. Physical stores remain important for that. Plus, these stores are getting smarter, better digital integration, omni-channel strategies.
Meaning online and offline, working together smoothly.
Right, click and collect, maybe even rapid delivery from the store itself. It's making brick and mortar more competitive and convenient.
So physical retail isn't dead, it's just changing.
Definitely evolving. And it fits that broader shift in India from small, unorganized shops to bigger organized retail chains.
Yeah, the market's projected to grow massively, right? Something like 9% a year.
Exceeding 190 trillion rupees by 2034, potentially. It's a huge transformation.
Okay, and the third one was FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, food, toiletries, everyday stuff.
Yep. Continued recovery there, too. Up 4% on average monthly spending in FY25.
Lower than the 17% in FY24, but still positive, especially after that big dip in FY23.
Exactly. That negative 22% slump in FY23 was significant. So 4% shows continued, albeit slower, recovery.
And what's happening within FMCG? Just buying more basics?
Interestingly, no. The report suggests a growing preference for discretionary items even within FMCG.
Like what? Premium biscuits instead of basic ones.
Yeah.
Or adding more non-essential treats.
Things like that, yeah. Even if prices went up slightly, volume growth was still strong in late 2024, like 7.1% volume growth in Q4, despite a 3.3% price hike.
So people were still buying more quantity, even if it cost a bit more.
It suggests they were. And rising disposable income is key here. It's projected to almost double between 2019 and 2029.
Giving people more purchasing power to make those slightly less essential choices.
Precisely, changing spending patterns.
Now, something else the report emphasizes is cash, the infrastructure for cash.
It's presented as a key tailwind for all this consumption growth.
How so?
Well, between 2014 and 2024, you saw big increases in currency and circulation, up 157%, ATMs up 32%, bank branches up 36%.
So the physical infrastructure for cash has actually grown quite a bit over the last decade.
It has, and despite the huge growth in digital payments, cash is still, very dominant.
Really? Even with UPI and everything?
Yeah, RBI data mentioned in the report showed the currency to demand deposits ratio was still above its long-term average recently. People like holding cash. And it still accounts for the majority of consumer spending. Around 60% as of March 2024.
60%. That's much higher than I might have guessed.
It shows India's kind of unique path, right? Building both digital and cash infrastructure side by side. Both are growing.
That dual economy thing, which actually connects to another point in the report. Quick commerce versus traditional e-commerce.
Ah, yes, that was quite a contrast.
Quick commerce up 10% in FY25.
While traditional e-commerce was down 17%.
That's a big divergence. What's going on there? Speed.
Speed seems key. That under 30-minute delivery promise of quick commerce is clearly appealing, plus hyper-localization.
And maybe traditional e-commerce is feeling pressure from people going back to physical shops, too.
The report suggests that, yeah, a shift back to organized physical retail, and also quick commerce players are selling more than just groceries now. They're expanding their product range.
So convenience and speed are winning out for certain types of purchases.
It looks that way. People want stuff fast and local for some things.
Okay, let's circle back to the geography. You mentioned spending is happening across the country.
Yeah, the report says it's becoming pervasive across all states and UTs.
And the evidence for that is partly from ATM withdrawals.
CMS tracks cash dispensed from ATMs, and that's been going up pretty consistently since FY17. The only dip was FY21.
The main pandemic year, understandably.
Right. And the average amount taken out per ATM visit is also up about 4% overall in FY25.
And those top 5 growth hotspots we mentioned, Bihar, Delhi, UP, Himachal, Chhattisgarh, they all saw positive growth in cash dispensed.
Yes, reinforcing that consumption growth story in those regions. And seeing the list change over the last few years, apart from Delhi's consistency, really shows how dynamic it is.
It really paints a picture of this interplay between cash and digital. Digital is soaring, no doubt.
Absolutely, the adoption rate is phenomenal.
But cash is still king, or at least a very powerful region. ATMs are vital.
Crucial for access for a huge part of the population. And interestingly, the average amount people withdraw from an ATM went up in FY25.
Oh yeah, by how much?
About 3% year on year to over 5,600 rupees, with bigger jumps in some months.
That's interesting because didn't the average size of UPI payments go down?
Exactly. The report contrasts it with a drop in the average ticket size for UPI and person-to-merchant digital payments in the first half of 2024.
So maybe smaller digital payments for everyday things, but larger cash withdrawals for bigger buys, like those durables.
That could be one interpretation. It suggests cash and digital are playing different roles, serving different needs and transaction sizes, rather than one just replacing the other wholesale.
That's a nuanced picture. Now, the report also talks about something called the CMS Cash Index, the CCI. What exactly is that?
Right, the CCI. It's basically a tool CMS created back in 2016 after demonetization to track cash-based consumption.
How does it work? What does it measure?
It's a weighted index. It looks at two main things: how much cash is being put into ATMs for people to withdraw,
Okay, cash replenishment.
and how much cash is being collected from organized retailers, cash they've taken from customers.
So cash going out via ATMs and cash coming back in from shops.
Pretty much. The idea is that tracking these flows gives a good pulse on cash-based economic activity.
And has it proven useful?
Apparently so. The report says it's been used for insights into the economy over the last 9 years, even by policymakers.
And does it correlate with other economic indicators?
Yes, that's a key point they make. It shows a strong correlation with the HSBC India Composite PMI.
The Purchasing Managers Index, that's a big measure of economic health.
Exactly. So the fact that the cash index tracks closely with the PMI really underlines how linked cash usage still is to the overall economy's dynamism. It suggests the CCI is a pretty good near real-time indicator.
Fascinating. So tracking physical cash flows still gives us a powerful signal about economic activity alongside all the digital data.
It seems so. It's a vital piece of the puzzle.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really thorough deep dive, pulling all these threads from the CMS report. We've covered quite a bit.
Yeah, the shift back to goods, the resilience of cash, that rise in discretionary spending.
The changing retail scene with quick commerce and multi-brand outlets, the shifting geographic hotspots.
It definitely shows a complex and rapidly changing picture of Indian consumption.
Absolutely. It's not simple, is it? This report gives us a great snapshot, but things are always moving.
Constantly evolving.
So let's leave our listener with a final thought. Considering everything we've just unpacked, goods, cash, digital, discretion, location, what do you think the next curveball might be?
The next surprising shift.
Yeah. Where might Indians start spending their money next? Or how might they do it in ways we haven't quite seen yet? Are there factors maybe not explicitly covered here? Tech, infrastructure, maybe even cultural shifts that could drive the next big change?
That's a great question to ponder. The interplay between all those factors is definitely where the future trends will emerge.
Something for you to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive today.